Welcome and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Evidently You're Unaware. I am your host, Andrea, also known as the Successful Diva, and I'm excited to bring forth to you more information to elevate your awareness. Evidently You're Unaware is designed to be a platform dedicated to discussing the issues, topics, circumstances, and people who impact our lives. The information forthcoming is designed to bring relevant, thought provoking discussions, not only into your peripheral view, but also into your central vision. And so it's time to get smarter. In today's land of disinformation, having a conduit through which facts can come through is crucial. Thus, on occasion, I intend to bring forth awareness on what the elected legislators are doing on both the state and federal level with their time through bills that can impact the lives of people and our businesses should they become law. Bills. If you've ever viewed a bill, meaning what legislators, shall I say, bring to the table to change or introduce a new law, they can sometime, when you're viewing them online, look very complex or even convoluted. If you're not familiar with how to flow and read through a bill, it could look like jargon. Because one of the things that we have to be sure when a bill is introduced is that we understand and have attention to detail so that we can know what is this bill attempting to introduce or change. How will the bill impact people or businesses? And what penalties, if any, what penalties will be enforced or rewards given should the bill become law? So let me introduce you to H.R. 22, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. And what is the target of the SAVE Act? You see it there. Please get familiar with this phrase because it's you're going to hear it several times throughout today's episode. And that is proof of citizenship. But before we dive into the SAVE Act and if it is passed, what it means to voters and the voting registration process, let's take a bird's eye view of the basics of government. Now, don't worry. I am not going to turn this episode into an entire civics class, but I do want us to take a basic overview of how a bill becomes law, because sometimes elections kind of get viewed as, choosing someone off of a menu. And we've got to understand that when people go to Congress, whether on a state or federal level, they have a part in a bigger picture. So follow me for a moment. The bill is introduced. A member of Congress proposes the bill, and then it's assigned to a committee for research and discussion. The bill is debated and voted on in the chamber, House or Senate, where it originated. If the bill passes, it goes to the other chamber for similar debate and voting. If both chambers pass the bill, it goes to the president. And that's the federal way. Ultimately, on the state level, that would be your governor. But nonetheless, if it passes both chambers, it goes to the president, and the president can sign the bill into law or veto it. If the president vetoes the bill, Congress can actually override the veto. So I just wanted to start off so that you understand before we discuss HR 22 that this is kind of a basic high level of how a bill can become law. So in the interim, in the interests of this episode, let me explain real quickly how the federal level looks. The United States House of Representatives makes up the lower chamber of Congress. The upper chamber is the Senate. And together, they comprise the national bicameral legislature of the United States of America. So we've got a House of Representatives and a Senate. That is how we get our Congress. The U.S. House of Representatives is made up of 435 members who each respectively represent districts in their state. The U.S. Senate, on the other hand, has 100 members, 2 each from each state. The proposal of new laws or the change of existing laws are introduced by these members. And so they get into what's called a bill. They get written up into what's called a bill. And again, I'm not speaking of currency. I'm speaking of bills that introduce new legislation that could become law or a change to a current law that could be, obviously, that a law would be amended and now we have a new law. So although we have those means of going through the House and the Senate, sometimes it can get, a little convoluted. Timing plays an issue. Sometimes first read doesn't happen right away. Sometimes it sits in committee for a while. I don't want you to get caught up into that. I simply want you to understand that this is the basic foundation of how bills become law. Timing has a part of it, but ultimately, should it become law, then we all must abide by that law. Is how our country is made up. And so what I want to discuss is going back to HR 22. I want to discuss this proof of citizenship. So let me give you some backdrop. The SAVE Act, HR 22, was introduced by Chip Roy, who represents Texas's 21st district. It is intended to amend the National Voter Registration Act that requires individuals to present in-person documentary proof of citizenship when registering to vote. I'm going to say that again. It requires individuals to present in-person documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote. So you may be thinking, well, what does documentary proof of U.S. citizenship mean? So let's talk about it. In this bill, HR 22, much of the conversation centers around having a birth certificate or other proof of documentation that matches the person who's registering to vote and where their place of birth occurred. According to the Center for American Progress, as many as 69 million married women in the United States have changed their legal name since getting married. And what does that mean? You guessed it. Their name will not match their birth certificate. But what does the SAVE Act not include? It does not allow proof of a name change or a marriage certificate to kind of supplement that. Yes, I changed my name. It once was this and now it's this. It does not allow that proof of name change as an allowable proof of identity. I wonder why that is. Moreover, if a voter decides that they do not want to get a passport, maybe they don't travel, whatever their need or their reason for not getting a passport is, nearly 146 million people do not have one. It could be more difficult for those who have changed their name to register to vote under the SAVE Act. So I'm going to go back to the SAVE Act and we're going to dive into it a little bit. And we're going to talk about what does it mean if this act were to, or this bill, shall I say, were to become law. What does it mean? It means, and I'm going to highlight a few things. I know that it may look simple, but it's really not. I just brought it in for your awareness level in this episode. The term documentary proof of citizenship means, with respect to an applicant for voter registration, any of the following: a form of identification issued consistent with the requirements of the Real ID Act of 2005, a valid United States passport, the applicant's official U.S. military ID card, together with a United States military record of service showing that the applicant's place of birth was in the United States, a valid government-issued photo ID card that shows the applicant's place of birth in the United States. Notice that I'm highlighting place of birth. This proof of citizenship, soon should this act become law, means you must verify that you were born in the United States to be able to vote in federal elections. Furthermore, number 5, a valid government issue photo ID is accepted, but only if presented together with one of these 6 things. So you can have a valid government issued photo ID, but only if it's presented with one of these things that you see listed on your screen: a certified birth certificate, an extract from the U.S. hospital record of birth, a final adoption decree, a consular report of birth abroad of a citizen of the United States, a naturalization certificate or certificate of citizenship, an American Indian card issued by the Department of Homeland Security. And so that's now 2 things that must accompany each other. And the dots that you see means there is much more relevant verbiage inside of this SAVE Act that I just did not want to place on the screen, but it definitely has more to it. But these are the identifying pieces of documentation that would constitute proof of citizenship. The SAVE Act, in summary, under any method of voter registration in a state, the state shall not accept and process an application to register to vote in any election for federal office unless the applicant presents documentary proof of United States citizenship with the application. And the through line, as you heard me say at the top of this episode, place of birth and proof of citizenship is the key. And vote by mail voters, citizens who complete a mail registration for getting your ballot by mail, you are still going to be required to present proof of citizenship, and you'll be instructed on how to do that. There's so much more to this. I know we can't go into them all in one episode. I may have to do a part 2 to this, but nonetheless, I want you to know that over and above all of that you've heard me share thus far, making it obviously a little more difficult for people to register to vote should this bill become law, it outlines further in that bill how voters will be able to register when they are applying for a motor vehicle driver's license. It also addresses removing non-citizens from the registration rolls. There's so much more. We have to know what is happening at the federal level, and you'll soon hear shortly at the state level, in efforts to attack the voter and the increase in voter turnout. HR 22 is at the federal level, but do not think for one moment that these types of bills are not being introduced on the state level across this country. In fact, we're going to take a look at this wonderful state of Florida, and HB House Bill 1381 dealing with elections. Attempts to control and even eliminate the number of eligible voters is rampant all over this country. And HB 1381 is just one of them. It was filed by Jenna Persons Malika. I pray that I'm pronouncing that correctly, but there she is. Rep. Persons Malika represents Florida's 78th district. That's a part of Lee County down in Fort Myers. And there are 15 or more similar bills comparable to this that have been introduced in the Florida State House and Senate. That is the companion bill to this bill. So people are wanting I'm just going to call them people, but in actuality, they're your legislators elected to represent best interests. Once they get there, they are wanting to literally keep people from registering to vote. Here's what this bill, and again, these are some of the key provisions. There's more in the bill, but here's what it will do should it pass in the state of Florida. Eliminate student IDs as a valid form of identification for voting. Removes credit debit cards, retirement home IDs, neighborhood association IDs, any other option that can be provided for identification. It removes it. Vote by mail request forms will not be automatically mailed to voters. You must actively request that form from your supervisor of elections office. Forces all counties to cut early voting from 15 days to 10. Souls to the polls. Yeah, that will be impacted. There's a shorter time frame for early voting. It allows political parties to endorse judges. Further politicizing Florida courts. It requires driver's license to indicate citizenship status. Also expands the RICO or racketeering laws so that there is higher penalties for groups of people who are accused of fraud and voter registration. There is so much more to this bill. And unfortunately, these are the things that are both legislators on the federal level as well as legislators on the state level are doing with their time while they are in office. And so what I want to ask is, how does this impact you? Who do you know that this could possibly impact? Because these bills are currently working their way through the committees, both federal and state level. We live in a country where most people in the world admire, or at least they used to, our ability to vote. This is a country where it's a privilege, and some people only dream of having this privilege and or opportunity to vote. And one could surmise that individuals have evidently become aware, and I'm just simply saying they could surmise that they could possibly be the minority. Why else would they make so much effort at keeping people from registering rather than actually pitch their case as to why they should be in the legislative offices that they seek? I'd rather see you run a campaign and tell me why I should vote for you, right? No, some people would just rather keep people from voting. So the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, would make it harder for millions of individuals to register to vote because they will most likely not have access to or be able to secure the additional documents required to prove their citizenship in this country. And who do you think make up the majority of those millions of people? You guessed it. People of color, married people who have changed their name, younger people, and seniors. This is an act that could be very, very, very dangerous in terms of voter registration numbers should it become. So, what have you taken for granted? Ask yourself that hard question. What have you taken for granted when it comes to voting? Attention, Florida residents. If you have been getting your mail ballot by mail, that request expired as of December 31st, 2024. It is time you must re-request or renew your request to receive your ballot by mail. Does not matter that you've been getting it by mail for 50 years. You must now renew that request. Now's the time. Do not procrastinate. Renew it. If what you heard in this episode remotely just gives you the chills remotely, figure out what it is you need to do. Who's that teenager in your home that's not registered to vote? Maybe they are approaching age 18. Guess what? You can go ahead and get them registered to vote because they'll be 18 before or by the time the upcoming election occurs. It is time. Do not wait. Now is the time. if you need to put your hand on a certified copy of your birth certificate, visit your nearest Vital of Statistics office, get it ordered, get yourself a copy just in case your teenager or someone you know may need that documentation to prove their citizenship in this country. This is not meant to scare you. These are real bills, real numbers, HR 22, that are going through committees in an effort to become law. And right now, as we know, we do not have a lot of people in this particular administration willing to stand up and say, no, we should be welcoming those voters into this process democratically so that they can elect those they choose. We do not have that. And so we have to take the proper measures. If you can secure a passport, whether you travel or not, get one. It's probably going to be for your good. So I will, before closing out, I want to share just something that I need to bring to your attention. And that is this: today's elections require a different kind of voter. Today's voters must be educated and engaged on every level in every election, and that begins at the local level. Our vote matters. Yes, it does. But who is granted our vote is the lifeline of our democracy. It is. And so if you do not believe that these things are happening, I challenge you, inquire and try to look it up. We've got congress.gov. You can go to the Florida State House of Representatives. All of this information is available to you. I'm just simply bringing it, hopefully, into your peripheral view, remember, and your central vision, so that you can take the necessary steps and not be one of the ones that says, uh-oh, I did not know. I was not aware that these people were doing these things to keep me or my family or future generations from voting. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Evidently You're Unaware. Remember, it is no longer safe or acceptable to live in ignorance. This information is designed to elevate your awareness and your consciousness of the impact decisions can have on your life and the lives of others. Comment. Inbox me at Andrea at strategicblueprint.info. That's Andrea at strategicblueprint.info. You may want to have more information on the SAVE Act or any other pending legislation. I will be able to provide with you information that is available in contacting your elected representative or discovering what other legislation they may be sponsoring or co-sponsoring. It is essential because, like it or not, we are all experiencing these inconsiderate and discriminating attacks on our democracy together. Don't forget to subscribe to me at YouTube on at Evidently You're Unaware, and follow me on Blue Sky at thesuccessfuldiva.bsky.social. I'll see you soon.
Is a platform dedicated to shining light upon various issues, topics, circumstances, and people who influence our lives. The information provided should not be considered advice for legal, health, investments, or the endorsement of an individual or group. Neither the host nor the guest of Evidently You're Unaware is responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from using the information shared within this podcast. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Evidently You're Unaware.